Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 52, featuring the top 5 scenes in a Brig. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse, and I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast. And tonight is a very special episode of TrekRanks. We have quite a few different series that we like to go through here on the show. We've done our top 5 underrateds and our top 5 guilty pleasures, and there's other ones as well. But my favorite series that we tap into here on TrekRanks is our top 5 scenes in a blank. And we started this a couple of years ago, which is actually crazy for me to think that we've been doing this for a couple of years now. But we started this series back in, I think, 2017, because someone at my work was literally just joking with me about crazy topic ideas and suggested, well, you should do top 5 scenes in a turbo lift. And I was laughing, and then about 5 minutes later, I was like, no, a lot of good scenes in a turbo lift. That's a good topic. I'm going to do that. So that has turned into our top 5 scenes in a blank. And tonight, we're doing our top 5 scenes in a Brig. Previously, we've done turbo lifts and shuttlecrafts, and even top 5 scenes in a Jefferies tube. So we got it all tonight. And by the way, if you want to call Brig a holding cell or security area, it can be whatever you want. We're going to go through that in our Prime Directives. But I think everyone pretty much knows what the Brig is. It's a place that is oft mentioned and oft-seen in Star Trek. So there's a lot to choose from tonight, and to help us do that, we have 2 awesome Trekkies with us, and they're both TrekRanks newcomers. First up is Scott Matteson, who you might remember from a great voicemail that he left us for part of the temporal causality loop back on episode 48. It was amazing, and it's proof that if you give us a call and give us your picks, we will treat it as an audition and get you on the show. So welcome to TrekRanks, Scott. Glad to get you on, man.
It went exactly as I planned.
Yes, perfect. It was an awesome list. And also joining us tonight is Rick Tetrault, who, like Scott, is also an experienced podcaster and an old school Trekkie like myself, which I love. So, Rick, awesome to get you on the show. I know we've been talking about it a while as well. Welcome to TrekRanks, man.
Peace and long life, sir. Thank you very much. I've been really excited to come on here.
Could not be more excited to get you guys on. So, as we like to do here, our tradition for our first-time guests, we like to get just a quick backstory on your Trek origin story. So, Scott, quickly, tell us how you got into Trek, and I also want to know if you're a completionist or not.
Well, the easy portion of the question first, as far as being a completionist. I can't say that I am, because there are it pains me to say it, but there are still some TOS episodes that I've never gotten around to seeing. I have the utmost respect for the series. I love the series, and there are plenty of episodes that are amazing to me, but there are also plenty of episodes that I just haven't seen, because that wasn't the show that really brought me into the franchise. So there's some TOS and there's some animated series that I haven't seen. But TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery, I'm fully up to date, and TNG and Deep Space Nine are usually on a loop on my Netflix. I'll have it playing in the background if I'm like working on a Photoshop project or something.
Same.
So it's always playing.
So then you got into Trek via TNG?
Yeah, that's really where it started. I mean, Trek was a fixture in my household since about as long as I can remember. My father was into Trek. Not as much as I and my brother have become, but he enjoyed it. My brother enjoyed it with him, and they would watch reruns of TOS. But because I was never the biggest fan of my brother, I kind of resented Star Trek for a while, and I didn't really want to like it. But because I was young, I was about 7, 8 years old when TNG premiered. I didn't know enough to stay away from it because I don't like my brother. The whole family sat down and we watched Encounter at Farpoint, and that became a family show that we would watch together. And because I'm 7, 8 years old, look at those trailers for that series. Look at the special effects and the music and the costumes and the colors. yeah, you're going to get drawn into that at that age, no matter what your previous history is with Trek. So TNG sucked me in with its tractor beam, and it has just grown ever since. It was a family staple, and then it became something that I enjoyed and I respected. And especially in the past, I'd say 5-6 years, it has gone from something that I've always been a big fan of to a major fixture in my life.
I love that. And that is a similar story. We've heard that from other guests about the family member thing, kind of being reticent to because of another family member, but then getting hooked in later. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I love it. Rick, same question for you. How'd you get into Trek, and are you a full completionist?
Yeah. I don't remember a time when I didn't know about Star Trek. I know that my father got me into it, but like I got my first Star Trek book, which was the James Blish adaptations of the original series, when I was maybe 7 or 8. So not only have I seen every episode of TOS a million times, I've also read them over and over and over again, because back in the 60s and 70s, because I'm old as dirt, we didn't have VCRs or DVDs or any of that fun stuff. As far as a completionist go, I have seen every, with the exception of TOS, because I was born in 1964, the year the Cade was made. I know that I saw The Empath when it was probably its summer rerun. But I don't remember watching the show regularly as a kid. But later in syndication, of course, I used to watch it every day after school and stuff. The only episode I didn't see from the animated series on in its initial broadcast run was In a Mirror Darkly on Enterprise. Otherwise, I've seen every single episode of Star Trek ever aired in order on TV. So yeah, I envy people who have stuff they haven't seen.
That's awesome. I'm similar. I was going to say that for you, Scott. At least you got some TOS to look forward to. I'm the same with starting with TOS and then seeing literally every episode as it aired live, except for one, which I can tell you, I've never said this before, but Devil's Due. I remember missing that on TNG for some reason because I was traveling and the recorder didn't work, and I had to catch up on that one a few months later. So other than that, though, every single one. So a little bit of trivia for TrekRanks listeners. All right, great background from you guys. I love it. Let's head down to the security holding area and go through our quick TrekRanks recalibration.
What are you recalibrating?
Everything. It's a sweeping, a recalibration of all systems.
I would be fascinated to observe this recalibration, Doctor.
As regular listeners will know, general order number 1 here at TrekRanks is that we love Trek. We love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started, because our favorite thing to do here is to talk about Star Trek.
But what is that Vulcan motto? Infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
And what is diversity? A celebration of differences.
And as Tetrault and Dr. Phlox just said, our mantra here at TrekRanks is no wrong answers. TrekRanks is basically just a celebration of differences. Our show is about all the reasons that we love Star Trek. We're not here to nitpick or to argue. We're just going to celebrate the greatness of Trek. We love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, now Discovery as well. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a quick reminder that Discovery spoilers are potentially in play. So with that in mind, tonight's episode is current through Season 2, Episode 8 of Discovery. And that was If Memory Serves, which was an amazing episode.
Oh, yeah.
So we might get some Discovery love tonight. We'll see. And then just one more reminder that, again, we use the term episodes as our quick and easy shorthand, but obviously the 13 films are always in play as well. So most of you have probably heard that before, but I'd like to reset every week for any newcomers that are jumping into TrekRanks for the first time. And on that note, just a reminder that our entire back catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and at the tricordertransmissions.com. Because one of the beauties of our show is that each episode is pretty timeless. You can listen and you can re-listen to our shows in any order you want. So if you haven't gone back to listen to any of our old episodes yet, we definitely encourage you to do that.
Hailing frequencies are open.
And you can find TrekRanks on the interface links at TrekRanks.com. And And you can contact me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. You can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. And for those of you enjoying all of our shows here at the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network, you can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. We have a bunch of new awesome tiers there with different perks, and they're labeled as precious Star Trek metals, which is really cool. So if you ever want to be Trellium D or dilithium or the mega molecule, you can do that now at patreon.com. All right, Scott and Rick, how can everyone get a hold of you guys on the net access interface? Scott?
The easiest way, usually, is going the Twitter route. My personal Twitter account, which I use for most of my Star Trek talk and a little bit of non-Star Trek conversation here and there, is at Fleet Admiral UFP.
And Rick, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter. Oddly enough, is ADM Marius. Admiral Marius was an old screen name that I'm still using because why change it? So, yeah, and I'd love to talk Trek on Twitter as well.
I love it. We have two admirals here on Twitter. Fantastic. All right, I think we're ready to activate our quick level 1 diagnostic.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
This diagnostic cycle is going to be really quick. I think generally everyone knows what a brig is and where it's located and how frequently it's used in Trek, but I thought it'd be interesting just to tell everyone exactly where the word brig comes from. I looked this up because I wasn't really sure. I figured it was like short for brigantine, but I wasn't sure kind of what that meant. So so brig specifically is a place on a ship for temporary confinement of offenders in the U.S. Navy. That was the dictionary definition. And the word brig is short for brigantine, which is like a square-rigged, two-mast naval vessel. And they would shorten the term to brig, which basically was a jail. And that came from different types of prison ships back in the 18th century. So I figured with a little Brig 101 here, since we're going to be talking about it so intently here in our order of things that's coming up. But now let's jump into our Prime Directive to see how everyone kind of define their episodes.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our Prime Directive.
Define Prime Directive.
So, Scott and Rick, I'm really curious how you guys approach this topic, because there's not, you can define a brig however you want. You could do it as an official holding cell, or you could do it as maybe someone just being abducted and held against their will. So lots of different ways to look at this in the Trek universe. So Scott, how did you look at your list, and how did you narrow it down? And I'm curious if you found this process easy or hard. Just talk us through that.
I found it intimidating at first, but then it became a lot easier. Just like when I was putting together the list that I sent you in that voicemail, I wasn't sure I'd be able to do it. And then the next thing I know, I have 3 times as many entries as I need, which is probably the way it goes for a lot of people. I tried to keep it simple, knowing that this was going to be my first visit to TrekRanks, and who knows, maybe my last. I wanted to keep it simple, practical, and not get too esoteric. If this was my 3rd or 4th appearance, I would have gone like, a brig is the Ron Burgundy glass case of emotion. So number 5, Riker in his own brain and frame of mind, he's trapped in there. No, that's too much. Just a room. It's a cell. It's a jail cell. It can be in the brig of a ship, or it could be in an actual prison. And that's where I started from. And I got some entries, not as many as I wanted. So I expanded it a little bit to be any area or location where a character is held against their will. And that opened it up a little bit more, and then I got what I was looking for from there. So a jail cell and or a location that someone is being held captive.
I love that. That's the kind of thing we're looking for in the Prime Directive, because in this one there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and that's interesting. So you kind of eliminated frame of mind, and that is a good example of one that's not necessarily a brig per se. So, okay, Rick, how about you? How did you break down your list?
Pretty much the same thing. I knew immediately that I wasn't going to restrict myself to just scenes in a quote-unquote specific brig. But I ended up with more in actual brigs than I expected to. I will say that that Frame of Mind did end up on my secondary systems, but it also didn't make the final cut. But yeah, just anytime our major characters are being held somewhere against their will was good enough for me.
Okay, that is great. And for me, this is one of those topics that I just love researching, because how I do this sometimes when I know the topic's coming up in a couple of weeks or sometimes longer, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. I just sometimes will just zone out while I'm in a commute or when I'm trying to go to sleep. And I just start thinking of every episode I can possibly think of where there might be a brig scene. And remember that part where I said I love talking about Star Trek? I love doing that because I'm just thinking Star Trek. I'm thinking about, oh my God, there's so many. So I love this topic. I had so many fun ones to think about. I brainstormed a ton of them. I have a lot of secondary systems I'm going to be rattling off. And then I just chose the 5 that I really wanted to talk about tonight that were my favorites that kind of stood out. And there's one kind of a big one that I'm pretty fired up. I had it pegged, and then I'll say that something happened in a recent episode of Discovery. I was like, oh my God, it's even more amazing. So I'm pretty fired up to talk about that one. All right, let's do this third Automaticon. It's time for the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Thank you, third Automaticon. And as always, just a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, each of us will reveal our 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease our pick. Then we'll reveal our episode title and then the specific scene in a brig that we're highlighting, and then we'll talk through that a bit. And at the end, we'll go through some secondary system selections from everybody for picks that maybe just missed their list. And as always, if we have any duplicates, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedoes. Okay, Scott, let's start with you, man. What's your number 5 pick for scenes in a brig?
All right. My number 5 is a scene that it made it to the top 5 because of the emotional connection that it holds with me. I remember the feeling that I had, that I think the whole family had while we were watching this episode in real time. It's a season finale, so we knew that everything that was happening was going to leave us wanting by the end, because there's no way they were going to resolve before the end of the episode. So my 5-word summary is, I was like you once. Hashtag, would you kill Geordi? We're talking about Next Generation Descent Part 1, Season 6 finale.
Excellent.
Data and, what's his name? Croesus.
Croesus, yes, with Data trying to kill... Oh, no, it's when they're talking in the brig.
Yeah, it's Croesus activating the device on his arm and beginning to pull Data into the Borg thrall.
Fantastic pick. I love that one. I had thought of this one, didn't end up on my list, but that's a great pick. So what's the main reason you picked it?
First, in the episode leading up to that scene, we have the return of the Borg. They're acting very strange. They're violent. They're brutal. We have not seen the Borg like this before, and it definitely helped to put the scary back into the Borg after the not so scariness of Hugh the last time we saw them. Now the Borg are back and they're scary again. And now Data's acting weird. Why is he getting emotional? Why is he getting homicidal? And to have a scene with Data and this very wily, sly Borg who's acting unlike any Borg we've ever seen before, their back and forth is engaging. But then when you realize that Croesus, I feel worried that I'm getting the name wrong and that people are going to send in tweets and emails afterwards if it's not Croesus.
Yeah, it's Croesus, right? I'm pretty sure that's right.
I sure hope so. So the entire bit of dialogue between Croesus and Data, you see Croesus getting under Data's skin and really manipulating Data's emotions, which he doesn't even realize that he has. And by the end of the scene, you know that he has completely turned Data. He's got him wrapped around his finger. And now whatever the Borg have planned, Data's going to help them. And for a youngster like me, that's scary.
The creep factor in that scene is extremely high. And
yeah.
Croesus that's scary. It's scary. There's no doubt about it. I love that. That's an awesome pick. It's a big time scene. Rick, what's your take on that one?
I can't say I remember too much about that episode. It was not one of my favorites. And by the way, yes, IMDb confirms it's Croesus. You don't have to worry about emails.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were certainly aspects of it that were really awesome. And yeah, that scene, what I remember of it was really powerful.
Yeah, Descent. The first half of Descent, I actually think is really strong. It's really good. Maybe the second half might be a little bit more paint by numbers, but I love that scene. It's a tone setter, and I love that you said how it's an emotional pick for you, thinking back to when you saw that at the age you were at.
Yeah, there's a lot of TNG falls into that category because I was so young and the family was so into it, and we started when it was in syndication and running in reruns. We would tape every episode, so we had a collection of like 30 video cassettes that were full of nothing but Star Trek episodes. And that's when my binge rewatching started, was way back in the days of VCRs.
That's awesome. Rick, how about you, man? What's your number 5 pick?
Okay, I had both my number 5 and my number 1. I had 2 for each one that kept flipping and flopping, but I just like 5 minutes ago settled on this one because I love this episode so much and I love the performances in this. My 5 words are dance around the sanity pole. And my hashtag is a bottle of Kanar and an Orion slave girl. It is Gul Dukat and Ben Sisko at the beginning of Waltz, season 6, episode 11 of Deep Space Nine.
That's a great pick. There are so many on my secondary systems, and that one is not on there. It may have crossed my mind at one point when I was thinking about it. That's an awesome pick. I mean, what a
I'm such an idiot.
No, you're not.
That should have been there. That should have at least been my secondary systems, but I didn't think of it. Oh,
this is what TrekRanks is. I love this pick. So, Rick, talk about why you picked it.
Well, this whole episode is Mark Alamo at his absolute best. You know, there have been lots of lists that have put Gul Dukat as the favorite Star Trek villain, and I know some people, no, it's Khan, no, it's Dukat. I don't want to pick favorites, but I think it's criminal that Alamo was never got an Emmy for his work, because especially in this episode, he is walking a razor sharp line between sanity and insanity, and just the way he is in control of every conversation with Sisko, especially at the beginning, even though he's the one in the brig behind the force field, he's totally dominating the conversation. And I love how Avery Brooks plays how uncomfortable and off balance he is when he's dealing with Dukat in that situation, even though he's on the quote unquote high ground. And then later on in the episode when the tables turn, it's just it's a masterpiece of acting, and the chemistry between the two of them is just wonderful. And there's nothing bad about that episode at all.
It's amazing. That's a perfect summary of it. It's actually, I've got a list of a few episodes where you can basically pick the whole episode as kind of and
yeah, I had a few of those myself.
This one's kind of close to that. It's a little different, but basically Sisko's being held by Dukat at some level pretty much the whole episode. Awesome pick. Scott, how about you on this one?
I feel like I should just turn my list over and push it across the table like I'm folding a poker hand. For me to not have thought of that is ridiculous. Rick is absolutely right, as he usually is when he and I have conversations. That entire episode is brilliant. I don't tend to think on the opening scene on board the ship as much as the rest of the episode, because the rest of the episode just kind of drowns out that first scene for me. With just the power of every conversation the two of them have, not just because they are two of the strongest characters in the series, not just because it's two of the strongest performers in the series, but because it's two of the best voices on the series.
Yeah.
I cannot get enough of Avery Brooks' voice. When I met him in person, I just to stand there and listen to him was the high point of the convention for me. And to hear the two of them, anytime the two of them are talking to each other, they are trading dialogue, but it's music.
Yeah, really. And the episode's called Waltz for that reason. It's amazing. Music and dance, obviously. But I love this pick. And you said that the rest of the episode does kind of drown out this moment, or because you think of the rest of the episode, but this moment is so powerful the way it sets it all up.
I'll admit, when I went back just to check on it, I was surprised at how short it was.
Yeah, it's short, but it's an amazing setup. So
yeah.
All right, awesome pick. All right, I'll close out round 5 with my pick, and this is the one that I was referencing just a few minutes ago, where I was gonna probably pick this one. It might have ended up on my secondary systems, but then I watched the recent episode of Star Trek Discovery, and I realized, holy crap, these are kind of the same things, really. So my 5 words in a hashtag: McCoy ripping Spock echoes Burnham, hashtag pointed ear hobgoblin. It is Bread and Circuses from TOS Season 2. And it's a scene at the very end where Spock and Bones are being held in the jail cell, or the holding cell, by Claudius Marcus. And again, I was thinking about picking this, and I really zeroed in on it after watching If Memory Serves here in Discovery's second season, when it was revealed that Burnham had really wounded Spock as a child with these words that you kind of knew that was what was coming. And for me, once you heard them, it was really, really emotional and stinging, where she was basically telling him, you can never be human. You can never fit in on Earth, which is kind of the reverse of what you always think Spock wants to be Vulcan, and he wants to be not emotional. But as this kid with Burnham, he was wanting to explore his humanity and explore Earth. And here's Burnham saying, no, you can never be human. You can never fit in on Earth. She calls him a weird half-breed. And in this scene with Bones and Spock in this cell together, there's a moment where Bones is trying to basically thank Spock for saving his life in the ring with the Romans. And it's classic Spock. He's just like testing the cell, trying to figure out a way to escape. Could care less about Bones' thank you. And it's just saying, yep, I understand, you're human, you need to do that. That's something I really care about. And then Bones just rips him, basically saying you're more afraid of living than dying. And every day is one more day where you might let your human half sneak out. He's calling him insecure, and he says you wouldn't know a nice, warm, decent feeling if you had one. And the look on Spock's face as he's doing this, oh my God, it's just like the little kid in If Memory Serves. I'm telling you, people, unbelievable. I don't know how they did this, or I don't think it's something they were intending, and the writer watched Bread and Circuses, but the connection here is so good. It's really, really hard to watch, because all I could think of was Spock's face when Burnham's just blasting him.
I don't know why you're not afraid to die, Spock. You're more afraid of living. Each day you stay alive is just one more day you might slip and let your human half peek out. That's it, isn't it? Insecurity. Why, you wouldn't know what to do with a genuine, warm, decent feeling.
And of course, that scene ends with both of them just kind of like, they both kind of sigh and realize that all they really care about is just that they're worried about Jim. So classic scene, classic TOS movement, and now even more relevant because of If Memory Serves. So Scott, what's your take on that one?
So remember how I said that there were some episodes of TOS that I didn't see? Oh,
you probably haven't seen this one. No problem. Well, you're going to love it when you see this. Rick, I know you've seen this one about as many times as I have.
Oh, yeah. This was definitely on my secondary systems, and that's a wonderful scene. Is that the one that it ends with? I know I'm worried about Jim too.
Exactly.
That is that one? Okay, yeah.
Just kind of sighed, and McCoy says, "Yeah, I'm worried about Jim too."
Yeah, the bickering between Spock and McCoy when it gets real are always some of my favorite scenes in TOS, and that's one of the best ones.
I'm telling you. And now I'm telling you, if memory serves, and the way that they touched on Spock there, it's going to change a lot of those scenes or how people can perceive them, which is awesome. Okay, let's move on to round 4. Scott, what's your number 4 pick?
My number 4 pick is a very short scene, and there is, save for a couple words, there's no dialogue in the scene either, but just the action in the scene. The first time that we watched it had us just riveted because at first we couldn't tell what was happening, and then once we realized it, it's super exciting. 5-word summary: got a license to Hoch, hashtag Klingon 007. This is Next Generation Heart of Glory, where the 2 Klingon captives are building a pistol with the bits and pieces of their uniforms.
I love this pick, and it was on my secondary systems. I probably wasn't going to bring it up because it was deep on my list, but I love that moment. So anytime somebody's kind of putting a little gadget together like that to trick the sensors, love it. Awesome pick. Hit it.
There's really not much more to say about it than that. It's watching 2 Klingons do what they do best, which is prepare to make some people dead.
Yeah.
And
it's a cool moment. It really is.
Right. They planted the seed early on when Conmel took the little horn off of the dead Klingon's boot and secreted it in his belt. So why did he do that?
Yeah.
Well, then later on we figure it out because that's got one of the emitters hidden in the horn, and then they just pull the barrel and the power cell and the grip, put it all together. And now, sure, it's 1987 Star Trek Next Generation, so yeah, the thing kind of bends and moves a little bit anytime they touch it. So you can tell that it's maybe not the highest production value in putting together that particular prop.
Oh, it was totally real. Stop it.
But and then the moment later when they got more tricks up their sleeve, literally their sleeve, as they tear something off of his sleeve and use that to take down the force field. And then you have to wonder, okay, security officer, you saw it happen, you turn away, you make the call, and then you're going to step your entire body into the doorway with your arms out to the sides without even pointing your weapon. And then you get shot. Because Next Generation security officers, not the best.
Yeah, well, it's also first season TOS. It sounds like Scott's nitpicking. Did anybody hear that? All right, it was perfect. Perfectly staged scene. It made perfect sense. Awesome pick. One of the first ones I thought of. Rick, what's your take on that one?
It's my turn to be a little embarrassed that I didn't think of this one. Although showing my age a little bit, I didn't think 007. I thought Jim West myself when they started doing that.
It's so Wild West.
But yeah, that's, the first couple of seasons of TNG are a little rough, but that was a fun episode. And I have a real soft spot for the Klingon stuff. And so that's one of the earlier episodes that I don't that I don't mind watching.
And someone's screaming into their mic right now. Make sure you mention that's Vaughn Armstrong, because that was Vaughn Armstrong, his first Trek appearance.
And one of my favorites from Vaughn Armstrong. That's it could be my favorite Klingon guest appearance in that one-shot appearance of Captain Chorus. And Vaughn Armstrong, especially that scene on the engineering catwalk, he just nails it.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And
now, obviously, I'm doing this for all the people out there who may not be sure who Vaughn Armstrong is, because of course I know who he is, but maybe you could refresh.
Well, first off, Vaughn Armstrong died in my episode. Woohoo! Well, not technically. They're all the same. But he played Admiral Forrest on Star Trek Enterprise. That was his main recurring.
Oh, right. Okay.
He is well.
I mean, yes, of course he did.
You had me. He is well known as the most decorated guest actor in Trek history with the most alien appearances. So, anyway,
cool.
First, okay, let's move on. Rick's number 4 pick.
Okay, my number 4 pick is one of those iconic scenes that even people who aren't really into Star Trek probably know a bit about or have heard of. My 5 words are: each player gets 6 cards, hashtag except on Tuesday. We're talking season 2, episode 17 of TOS, a piece of the action, the Fizbin scene.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, they're being held. I didn't even think of that. I have a bunch of TOS references here, but did not think of that one.
For those of you who may your memory may be fuzzy of it, or you're not familiar with it, this is the Gangster Planet episode where Kirk and Spock have been taken captive by one of the mobsters, and they decide to create a diversion by the mobsters are playing cards in the room where they're being held prisoner, and so Kirk starts telling them about this card game from Beta Antares 4, which confuses Spock to no end. And he's just making up rules left and right that make no sense until he's got everybody so confused and so baffled. Then he drops a card on the floor, and they all kind of forget themselves. And then there's fisticuffs and nerve pinches and stuff, and hilarity ensues.
Yeah, that is a great scene. Scott, have you seen this episode of TOS?
Yeah, that one I have. That's a certainty. The concept of Fizbin and the notion of somehow, some way, learning to play Fizbin in our house was definitely a favored moment for the family.
I love it. That's a great pick, Rick. I had actually thought about maybe Krakow when they bring him up to the ship, but did not think of the Fizbin scene. Brilliant. Okay, let's close out round 4 with my number 4 pick. 5 words and a hashtag. Take care of yourself, Android. Hashtag I enjoyed our talk. It is TNG Season 3, Episode 11, The Hunted. It's one of my favorite underrated episodes of Next Generation. It's when Data and Roga Danar are speaking about their programming.
Oh, right.
In the he is the programmed and conditioned soldier from the planet in The Hunted, who is playing cat and mouse with the crew of the Enterprise. They finally get him in the Brig. They think he's this really bad dude, but then everyone starts talking and realizing, no, this guy is super got it together and super level-headed, and he's been conditioned to basically react when challenged. So I love this episode, the pacing, the morality play that takes place here with soldiers and PTSD is just awesome. And there's 3 or 4 big scenes with Roga Danar in the Brig. 2 are with Troy, and I picked this one with Data and Danar when they're basically talking about their programming, and it's great when Data says, it basically says my programming can be altered, and he asks him, yours cannot, and it's really powerful stuff. I just love this. One of the first episodes I thought of when this topic came up, and I knew I'd pick it because I want to talk about The Hunted. It's one of my favorite episodes. Scott, what's your take on The Hunted?
That's a fantastic pick from a fantastic episode. Say again, what episode number was it in that season?
It was episode 11 of season 3.
11. Okay. It was. So it's about halfway through the first season of what I call the golden years of TNG. Because for me, it's seasons 3, 4, 5 that absolutely shine for Next Generation. And it really kicked off in season 3, where they really found their stride. The writing was sharp. The production value went up. The uniforms changed again. The lighting made everything look so gorgeous. So all the pieces are in place for a scene like this to be as good as it possibly can be. And this was an example of what TNG had been doing right in the first and second season, which is when they let's just have 2 or more characters in a room, and the entire scene is going to be driven by nothing but the dialogue. No effects, no villains twirling their mustaches, no looming threat. It's just the dialogue. It's just them telling the story person to person. This is one of the best examples, especially in the 3rd season. It's very, very strong.
Yeah, the pacing of it is awesome. I love that kind of slow dialogue, heavy stuff in TNG. Rick, what's your quick take on this?
I love this. I love this pick. I love this episode. It's a wonderful, sobering allegory to veterans' rights, which sadly is as relevant today as it was 25 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, a great choice, great scenes. The actor that played Danar was wonderful. And yeah, I love his talk with Data. It was just awesome.
I should have noted his name. It's something. It's not Dennis McCarthy. That's obviously the composer. Something like that. And he was in the pilot of Voyager. He played the
doctor,
the medical officer.
There were a lot of people in the pilot that didn't
quite make it.
The late doctor.
All right, let's move on to the soup round 3. Scott, what's your number 3 pick?
My soup round pick is, again, all about the dialogue. And I'm actually stepping away from TNG for this one. Wow. 5-word summary: he couldn't bear to hear #the screaming. Deep Space Nine episode Duet.
Oh.
And it's not even one particular scene, more like every scene in the holding cell, which is several in this episode, between Kira and the fake Gul Darhe'el. I cannot remember the name of the guest actor who played him.
Oh, the guest actor was Harris Yulin.
I only ever think of him as the judge from Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah.
But every time the two of them sit down and are talking with each other, especially considering the fact that he's pretending to be someone at the beginning of the episode, then they determine that he is someone else. And then it looks like he might be someone else. But every angle he comes at it from, he is clearly in full control of the conversation. He is steering the boat, and everyone else just has to try to work through the thorn bush of words that he's thrown at them, and it's played so perfectly.
Yeah, incredible pick. The emotion of this, the scene, the whole episode, the way he keeps Kira and everybody guessing, and it's really that moment in Deep Space Nine where they kind of. There's a few good episodes before that, obviously Emissary and a few others. This is the one where people are like, wait a second. This show has a different kind of texture and beat, and it's incredible. Rick, what's your take on Duet?
Your Honor, I'd like to put this off for a little while, but I would say warm up those torpedoes, sir.
Okay, then let's go to your number 3 pick. Rick, what do you got?
Okay, for the soup round, I'm going to bring us all the way up to date, well, almost anyway, to Season 1, Episode 2 of Star Trek Discovery. My 5 words are: request confirmed, ethical protocols engaged, #Burnham Kirk's the Shenzhou computer. And it is the Battle of the Binary Stars, the scene where Burnham gets the computer to let her go and let her pull a Dave Bowman and jump across empty space.
Oh, I love this pick. It's such a great moment.
I almost took it off my list because one of your guests last week just pulled it out of the air when you asked about the upcoming episode.
Right. Yeah. I just can't even remember if that was.
It was Shar.
It was Shar. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but this was just I couldn't take it off my list. It was just too strong a moment. I almost went with the earlier scene where the lieutenant dude gets blown out into space.
Right.
But I like this scene a whole lot better because it's one, it's not as depressing, and two, it's a one of the ways that Discovery calls back to early Trek without mimicking.
In what way?
How Burnham outlogics the computer and gets it to let her go.
That's a great point. It's so true. I love that scene. It's really well done. It's super smart, and the effects incredible. Just like something you've never seen before in Trek. Just an awesome moment. Scott, what's your take on Battle with the Binary Stars?
It's a good scene. It's a great scene in a brig, and it does a wonderful job of further introducing us to the character of Burnham, giving us that wonderful example of her, as Rick put it, kirked the computer and outsmarted it get out of the cell. And so that tells us, okay, Burnham is not only smart, but she's clever, she's wily, and she's able to, think her way out of the situation. Though at the same time, I was a little bit bummed out by the fact that they're going to have us believe, maybe I'm nitpicking, they're going to have us believe that the Shenzhou computer
you're nitpicking.
Doesn't know that it's supposed to, okay, in this situation, maybe let them out. Or maybe just don't put up force fields in the Brig. If they're in the Brig, then
what happened is that half the ship got whacked out, so the computer got a little jacked too. So it wasn't quite operating right. It was just that she had to kind of talk it through. But the force fields held, but the computer was a little off. Is that good for your nitpick?
Nice.
Well, also,
good save.
Sorry, that's what I did.
She chose a course of action that the computer considered to be lethal. And then she had to convince the computer that staying in the Brig was more lethal than leaping across the vacuum to the other door.
It's amazing. That's a perfect summary of it. Okay, let's go on to my soup round pick. 5 words in a hashtag. Filing clerk keeps Kira guessing. I just said a few minutes ago, hashtag the Butcher of Galatep.
Nice.
About him. It sounds like we're going to talk about him again. And of course, it's going to be on people's list. And we got a duplicate now, maybe a triplicate later. The whole episode and every scene in the DS9 holding self is amazing. It sets up so much of Kira's character and the whole series. We picked the exact same scene, Scott, when Amin Maritza says, "You have no idea what it's like to be a coward." You hear those screams every night. We have to be punished. We all have to be punished. So great. Amazing performance. Amazing episode.
Wrenching performance there.
Wrenching, yes. Okay, let's move on to round 2 and Scott's pick. What do you got, Scott?
This is the one episode on the list where I had to expand my definition of a Brig. It's not exactly a Brig, but I wanted to have these scenes from this episode on the list, and I wanted to have this character in my list. He was in the list that I left in the voicemail. I might just make this character my calling card and find a way to work him into every list for every episode I ever appear on. 5-word summary: crashed shuttles are also Brigs. Hashtag GUI therapy. We're talking about the season 1 Next Generation episode Skin of Evil.
Man, you got Armis again. Wow, that's fantastic. She was being held against her will for sure by Armis.
Armis as an underrated, underused, sadly forgotten villain is a hill that I will die on.
This sounds like 7-year-old Scott talking. So
I wish we could have seen more of him, and a lot of the reason for that is every conversation that he had with Deanna Troi when he enveloped the shuttle and spoke with her while she was inside it. Because that's where you get the most insight into that villain, who is, even after all those conversations, is still incredibly mysterious and vague. You don't really know what his story is. And I've never really figured out why more people haven't wondered aloud why we never heard from this villain again and what was his story. And the reason for that is every scene where he is talking with Deanna Troi, he is trying to dominate the conversation. He is trying to verbally subjugate her and break her spirit. But the entire time, and this is, I think, one of her more impressive moments of the season, where she is essentially fearless in the face of this villain. She doesn't let him rule her with fear, and gives back everything that he tries to throw at her as far as terrorizing her. She just turns it around and calmly deconstructs his psychology until it is his undoing by the end of the episode.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about Armis in that way, like they want to see more of him and hear his story. But you brought it up a couple of times, and you make a great case for him being a really compelling character. So I'm into it. I would love to kind of hear his backstory. And of course, he came up a lot recently on Discovery again, not to keep bringing it up, but with the Baul and some Saru backstory, where people might have kind of a connection. So fascinating. Rick, what's your take on Skin of Evil?
Like you said, a compelling argument. I never really gave Armis much thought other than just as, a monster of the week, in the amnesiac days of early Trek, where what happened one week didn't really carry over to the next. It never even dawned on me that we could hear from Armis again. I was always more taken by the technical aspects of the creature, the bravery of Jonathan Frakes for going into that pool, and of course the pettiness of how they dispense with Denise Crosby. But yeah, you make a good point for revisiting the character sometime.
So Scott, really quick, how much, I made a joke, but how much do you think this is because you connected with him so much, as a youngster when you were watching TNG?
That's probably where I started becoming interested in the character, was because that was a first season episode, so I was on the young side, and to see the havoc that Armis wrought with the crew, that's something that you hold on to when you're that young. So that's why we'll say that's why I remembered the character of Armis moving forward. But it wasn't until years go by and we have multiple Trek series running and completed, and we see villains come and villains go, and when there's that one villain that sticks with you, then you start looking beyond just the initial connection that made you remember that character, and you start thinking of, why do I still remember that character? Is it just because I was young? And then you realize, no, it's because of how they wrote the character and how he was constructed. And that's when you start seeing the potential that the character had. And then you start just, lamenting the loss of that potential. And you keep crossing your fingers and hoping that maybe they'll bring that character back when they begin airing the Picard series later this year.
Who knows what we're going to see. All right, love it. Rick, what's your number 2 pick?
My number 2 pick is, my 5 words are why humans don't like Ferengi, and a hashtag we're better than you. This is expanding the idea of what could be considered a brig. I suppose a force field ring in a cave counts. This is the season 2, episode 26 of Deep Space Nine, the Jem'Hadar.
That's a deep cut pick. I love it. That's totally counts. They are being pinned.
I have loved this moment ever since I saw it. When DS9 was being announced, when they said they were going to do the series, I was one of the naysayers about TNG when it was announced. I was like one of those, if it ain't Kirk and Spock, I don't want to see it.
So was I for about 3 episodes, and then I was like, this is awesome.
Well, seasons 1 and 2 kind of justified my
No, it did not. Go ahead.
But by season 3, I was hooked, and then going back, I was like, all right, maybe these weren't as bad as I remember.
Yeah.
But so my first thought, like everybody, was like, on a space station, that's ridiculous. And then I was like, now wait a minute, remember the past. But when they said that there was going to be a Ferengi as a main character, I was like, you have got to be bleeping me. Because, up until then, the Ferengi were just either a punchline or just a really badly realized villain. And Quark kind of, he was sort of up and down as they were still trying to figure out his character, and Armin Shimon was still trying to figure him out. But this episode, that moment was, to me, when 1, the Ferengi became an actual race instead of just a joke, and 2, Quark came to life. And Shimmerman is an amazing actor, especially through, tons of makeup and those teeth and everything. But that moment, it hit me, and it never left me. I've remembered it ever since. And, and then Quark just gets better and better as it goes along. But, that's for me when the Ferengi became an actual species in Star Trek. And I love that moment. And the whole episode's great. Even though we never see the Vorta power psionic blast thing again, but whatever.
No, that's an amazing episode. Quark is incredible in it. It's funny you say that about Quark. I always thought he kind of hit the ground running and was pretty consistent for 7 seasons, but that is the moment where you really get the depths, more of the depths of Quark and what he has to offer in terms of being kind of an observer as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not just foil. That's funny. I was the opposite, Rick, because when I heard it was on a space station, I was like, brilliant. I love this idea. The Ferengi bartender, fantastic. It's going to be so much good stuff going on. Scott, what's your take on the Jem'Hadar?
It's, again, an outstanding scene. And I didn't think of it necessarily as a scene in a brig. And see, this is where I realized that I kind of fell down a little bit in my Prime Directive. I was thinking of scenes where it was going to be the jailer talking to the prisoner, not exclusively necessarily, but that was usually my starting point. So I didn't think of that scene with the 2 prisoners talking to each other and having that conversation. Now that avenue has been opened up thanks to Rick's pick, it absolutely belongs on the list. That is a wonderful scene, showing us that it's not just Klingons that can be explored on a deeper level. It could be anyone. And, the Ferengi have been a failed villain and then comic relief. But when you look a little bit deeper, like Quark lets you in that episode, you see, okay, there's quite a bit more to them than that.
That's an amazing pick, Rick. I love the deep cut nature of that pick, and it really fits the definition. Okay, for my number 2 pick, my 5 words in a hashtag. Why are we fighting? Hashtag we're Starfleet. It is Battle at the Binary Stars. It's like Rick's pick, except I'm picking the scene with Ensign Danby Connor, because for me, this is actually one of my favorite scenes in the opening 2-parter of Discovery. I love the scene with Burnham and her escape, but I picked this one because I just love this performance from this kid, Ensign, from Sam Bartholomeos, the Ensign Danby Connor, as he stumbles into the brig, injured during this Klingon attack, and he just says something amazing. He's kind of incoherent, but he says, "Why are we fighting? We're Starfleet. We're explorers, not soldiers." And then, boom, he is blown into space. And wow, I was blown away, because to talk about Discovery and some of the season 1 surprises that the internet as a unit guessed, and there's a lot of spoilers out there, whether it was Lorca or Tyler and Vogue and the Mirror Universe. But there's a lot of surprises people didn't guess, like Georgiou coming back. And this one, because, and I talk about this a lot because I don't want people to forget, Sam Bartholomeos was part of all the pre-promotion of Star Trek Discovery. He was like, basically, and they weren't saying regular cast, they didn't say anybody was, but you got the perception he was regular cast. He was in for the long haul. He was on the stage with all the regular cast at Star Trek Las Vegas. For months, he was a part of all the interviews and everything. And then, boom, he was dead at the beginning of the 2nd episode. And that blew me away, that he was gone and just out. I really thought that was an extremely cool moment, really powerful. It set the tone for the series for me. And I just love that performance and that look on his face when he says, "Why are we fighting? We're Starfleet."
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, and also a precursor to the "We Are Starfleet" proclamation from Saru later in the Wolfen side. So love that one. Scott, any thoughts on that pick?
I love it. And the reason I love that scene is because it was Discovery showing us what we aren't used to seeing on Star Trek. Normally, in the previous series, everything is always so neat and clean and pat, even in combat. It's going to be some sparks coming from a console and maybe someone falls down, but everyone always gets back up and they go to their station and everything's fine. But here in this episode, during the battle, a crew member has been injured, and instead of, okay, they just quietly leave the set and they go, off screen and they're fine. I'm sure they're fine. We're following an injured crew member who thinks they're going to sick bay, and he's gone to the wrong place, and he is so messed up that all he can do is look around dumbfounded and say, why are we fighting? And he doesn't understand why they're in the situation they're in. And that type of confusion, that type of shell shock, I guess you might be able to call it, is not something that we're used to seeing on Star Trek. Really letting people be human rather than just, an extra. They come and do some business and then they're off scene again.
Yeah. Love that moment when he stumbles in there. Rick, any final thoughts on Battle at the Binary Stars?
No, just it was something that Discovery has excelled at, which is the out of left field punch in the gut that is just so they do it well enough that it's incredibly effective, and you're just kind of like, whoa, even though it's like All
right, perfect. Let's close it out. Round one. Scott, what's your number one scene in a Brig?
My number one scene, I was worried that it was going to be too obvious and that everyone would choose it for their number one, or at least somewhere in the top 5, but there was no way around it because it had to be done. 5-word summary: you are 6 years old. # say my name. TNG Chain of Command Part 2.
Oh, that's a great pick.
That didn't even dawn on me. Well done.
I didn't Chain of Command either. This is amazing. It's a brilliant pick. But I will say, it's tiny spoiler alert, your hashtag kind of might work for my pick. So we'll get there in a minute. But, I thought maybe, is he? Oh, wow. Oh, I love it. All right, Scott, what's your reasoning there?
Every scene between Picard and Gul Madred is brilliant. And especially considering the fact that David Warner got pulled in at the very last minute. He hadn't even had a chance to memorize his dialogue before he got on there. I'm pretty sure they had cue cards behind the cameras during every scene that he was in. Yeah. Because he was, so last minute casting for that role. But he just walked away with that entire performance. Owned. He only shows up in the final scene of the first episode, but he owns that entire first episode just from that one scene. And then to dominate Part 2 with keeping Picard in that room, and every scene between the two of them gets progressively more and more uncomfortable as Picard is being worn down. But my favorite, the one that I cite in this pick, is when Madred makes his mistake.
Yes.
Is when he lets Picard take the power back in the conversation, and he calls him by his name. He calls him Picard, which is another mistake. Picard notices it, calls him out on it, and then he turns Madred's childhood story against him and tells him, you are 6 years old, weak and helpless, and you cannot hurt me.
Yeah.
Even while he is being hurt.
Whenever I look at you now, I won't see a powerful Cardassian warrior. I will see a 6-year-old boy who is powerless to protect himself.
Be quiet!
In spite of all you've done to me, I find you a pitiable man.
Picard, stop it, or I will turn this on and leave you in agony all night.
Ah, you called me Picard.
What are the Federation's defense plans for Minos Corva?
There are 4 lights.
There are 5 lights. How many do you see now?
You are 6 years old. Weak and helpless. You cannot hurt me.
Certainly one of the top 5 Picard moments in the entire series is that mixed with there are 4 lights. You put those together in this one episode, and it's in the top 5 Picard moments of the entire series.
Yeah, that's a great shout out. My favorite part of that whole interrogation scene is when he says you're a 6-year-old boy, you can't hurt me. That part just, that was such a triumph. Incredible. I love this pick. I didn't think of it. Rick, what's your take on Chain of Command Part 2?
I'm also just floored that it never even crossed my mind, because it's easily one of the most powerful episodes of any Star Trek. Both Warner and Stewart, top of their game there. I don't have a bad thing to say about the episode. It's just so well done. It tiptoes right up to the edge of what you could get away with on a Star Trek episode, as far as accurately depicting both emotional and physical torture. Props to both actors for the lengths they went to that. And big props to Warner, because he, like you said, the actor who was going to play Madrid got sick at the last minute, and they brought Warner in, and he was reading his lines off of a cue card behind the camera. But you'd never know it.
Mm-hmm.
Just brilliant choice. Well done.
I love it. All right, Rick. Can't wait to hear your number one choice. Well,
all right. Arm those torpedoes.
Oh.
My 5 words. All you want is vengeance. # who every night covered his ears because he couldn't bear to hear the screaming for mercy of the Bajorans. It is Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 19, Duet.
I love that. I had already forgotten that we're going to have a triplicate. It's a triplicate! I love it.
Kind of like what you said, Scott, about being reluctant to choose Chain of Command. I had a feeling that Duet would be on everyone's list at some point, but I couldn't not put it on there. I grew up in South Florida, which means that the Holocaust was very, very present in most of my upbringing and my education. And this episode was so powerful. And especially the moment that I picked is when Maritza breaks down. Kira tells him, makes it clear that she knows he's not Darhe'el. And he just collapses.
You're Maritza, aren't you?
You mistake me for that bug. That whimpering nothing. Oh, you stupid Bajoran. Carl, don't you know who I am? I'm your nemesis. I'm your nightmare. I'm the Butcher of Galatep.
The Butcher of Galatep died 6 years ago. You're Eamon Maritza, his filing clerk.
That's not true. I am alive. I will always be alive. It's Maritza who's dead. Maritza, who was good for nothing but cowering under his bunk and weeping like a woman, who every night covered his ears because he couldn't bear to hear the screaming for mercy of the Bajorans.
It's such a powerful, moving, absolutely mind-blowing scene that when I went back to rewatch DS9 a few years back, I had forgotten that this was a season 1 episode. And that just blew me away because, DS9's first season wasn't the strongest, but, this was the measure of a man for DS9.
Yeah.
And then the very end when the Bajoran knifes Maritza, and just when he says he's Bajoran, that's enough, and Kira says no, it's not, and the look on Nana Visitor's face, it just says volumes that these two people did such a wonderful job with their performances of such really, hard hitting, very intense material couched in the fluffiness of a science fiction series. But it was, it was very clear the allegory they were going for. And I could not pick it, even though I knew everybody would.
Yeah. No, another great summary. It's an amazing episode. Scott, any final comments on Duet?
Only to say that in retrospect, I should have done more to lean on that particular scene, because obviously that's the scene I was thinking of when I picked it. I was talking about all their scenes together overall, but I really should have given more weight to that final conversation between the two of them, because Rick's got it right. That's the critical mass moment of that episode.
That's a great point. Well, listen, TrekRanks can stand tall and proud that Duet was picked by all three of us because it's that good.
Yeah.
Preserves. And, you never know with TrekRanks because I've said this many times. We did our top 5 data episodes and nobody chose Measure of a Man. So, never know. Okay, let's close it out with my number 1 pick. 5 words and a hashtag. It was the only day. Hashtag. For this moment, let me be your son. It is In Purgatory's Shadow, Deep Space Season 5, the death of Anabran Tain. Garrick and Anabran Tain having their final conversation. All the prison scenes in Purgatory's Shadow are pretty amazing. There's the claustrophobia and the Breen and the Romulan shooting each other. But this was my instant number 1 as I started going through this because it's just such a powerful scene. It does so much to build the backstory. For me, there wasn't like a huge shock that Anabran Tain was Garrick's father and that was the reveal. But the way they delivered it still just floored me. And, when you talk about Garrick in the country with his dad trying to master the riding hound and everything was just so powerful. And I just think in a couple of minutes they accomplished so much in giving Garrick this incredible backstory as a kid, and just that 2 minutes of dialogue added so much to Garrick, who obviously is such a popular character. Everybody loves him. It's Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolf script, and of course Paul Dooley played Anabran Tain. And
all I ask is that for this moment, let me be your son.
Elim, remember that day in the country? You must have been almost 5.
How can I forget it? It was the only day.
I can still see you. In the back of that riding hound, you must have fallen off 12 times. But you never gave up.
I remember limping home. You held my hand.
I was very proud of you. That day.
I love that moment. It's one of my favorites. Even with Anabran saying, "You're not my son," but then at the very end, admitting that he was proud of him. So incredible. Scott, what's your take on In Purgatory's Shadow?
Again, another reason why I should be fired from this podcast, because not only did I not think of that brilliant scene when I was putting my list together, but I watched that episode yesterday.
Okay, that's funny. That's pretty.
I'm in season 5 of my current rewatch, which I usually end up doing like at least twice a year with TNG and DS9. So,
well, it's not a classic Brig, right? You don't. That's why this topic's so interesting, because there's so many different ways you can think about it, like the Jem'Hadar or Skin of Evil. These are brilliant picks.
True enough. And again, that was another example of it's not the jailer talking to the prisoner, it's the prisoners talking to each other, which I guess that must have been a bigger stumbling block than I thought, because that's the second example in this episode that I didn't think of it, and that's what they have in common. Maybe that's what it was. But an absolutely brilliant scene with my favorite recurring character on DS9, hands down.
Yeah, he's everybody. He's genius.
If I were to get the chance to interview Andrew Robinson, it might just be an entire 1-hour conversation about that episode.
It's that good, that moment. Rick, what's your take on it?
I was this close to choosing part of that episode myself. So yeah, it's there's just so much to choose from in that one. So, it's all over my secondary systems, and that's the one. Yeah, I love Garrick too. Especially on those very rare moments when he's finally telling the truth about something.
Right. What do you think? Pretty sure he's
yeah, as sure as we can be.
So great. All right, well, let's jump into some quick secondary systems picks. Scott, what do you got on your list you want to highlight?
Okay, 5 words and a hashtag, and episodes for each of these. Feel it in your bones, hashtag rumble in the brig. This is Will You Take My Hand from Star Trek Discovery. Not necessarily a conversation, but just a beatdown between Giorgio and L'Rell.
Okay, I like that because I had L'Rell and Ash when they did T'Kuvma's Prayer. So that's similar.
Wonderful. That's a good one. You Need Your Tactical Officer, hashtag 31 early on. Enterprise episode Affliction with Archer and Reed, with Archer giving it in the business.
That was on my list too. Reed betrays Archer. I love this. Keep going.
Miles and Miles of Suffering, hashtag I Prefer to Laugh. Deep Space Nine episode Hard Time. Any scene between O'Brien and HR.
Hard Time. I didn't even think of Hard Time. We're going to start calling this a speed round. I love this. I didn't think of Hard Time. Go. What's your next one?
Cybernetics as a Second Career, hashtag Uncanny Likeness. Enterprise episode Borderland, the first scene between Arik Sung and Archer.
Oh, that's great. I thought of that one, did not put it on my list, but I love that pick.
I Am Only an Android, hashtag Sweet Justice. Next Generation, The Most Toys, the final scene of the episode between Data and Kivas Fajo.
All right, I'm going to cut it again because I always have one. I always highlight one as my toughest cut, and that was it. I'm a big fan of rubbing the salt in the wound of somebody when you're right and they're wrong, and basically being a bad winner. And I love when Data digs in on Kivas Fajo with those toys. So that was my toughest cut. Love it.
That was my first pick. It was the first one I thought of.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Okay, two more. Fire caves are ghost brigs. Hashtag Waken Ben Bach Falls. That was an odd hashtag. Deep Space Nine, What You Leave Behind, Part 2. The final showdown between Gul Dukat and Sisko. It's not really a brig or a jail cell, but that's where the Pa-wraiths are held against their will, so it counts.
But it's an awesome Sherlock Holmes hashtag. All right, you got any more?
One more. We're talking about brigs and cells and people being held. 5 words in a hashtag. Why am I on fire? Hashtag This Pick Is Too Easy. The Cage.
Of course. Oh my God, that's so fun. Even after If Memory Serves, I didn't really think of the cage as an option, but the whole thing, it's literally in the title.
It's right there. He's in a cage. And that was the question I was asking as a child. Why is he on fire? I don't get it, because I was too young to understand what was happening.
Oh my God. How did we? I'm so glad somebody mentioned the cage. That would have been humiliating to not have that, even after we talked about If Memory Serves so often. Okay, I love this secondary system speed round. Rick, what do you got on your list?
Okay, I've got Gamesters of Triskelion when Uhura prevents her drill thrall from raping her.
Yes, good one.
Enterprise incident with the Vulcan death grip.
Ooh, yes.
In a Mirror Darkly when Archer kills the Tholian. It's just, I know it's not a very happy moment.
Yes, I love it. That was on my. I had Archer and Forrest fighting in the Mirror Darkly on my secondary system.
Now, Rick, were you thinking of the scene where Dr. Phlox kills the Tholian?
Well, yeah.
Archer commanded.
By Archer. Okay, I wasn't sure where we were coming from on that one. Okay, gotcha.
CV's Pacem Parabellum with L'Rell and Cornwell.
Oh,
the Scream.
Brilliant.
Yeah. That was a tough cut. That one, yeah, it was either that one or the Battle of the Binary Stars, and Binary Stars just won out. And I also had the most toys on my list until Bill last week mentioned it.
Oh, right, yes. Well, yeah, Bill said the most toys. Yeah, I didn't let that affect me because I knew those were both going to be high.
But the moment that I would have used would have been when Data lied, because I think that is so awesome when he's beamed back over and O'Brien says the computer says that your weapon was in a state of discharge, and Data just says perhaps something occurred during transport.
Yep, genius. I love it. Okay, let me rattle off a few more. I've got just that split-second cut in Mirror Mirror to the Mirror Kirk in the brig screaming, and Spock's just down there like, who are these people? I love it. We've got the Pegasus, the very end with Riker in the brig and Picard coming to speak to him about all the problems that they face together.
Nice one.
Yep. And then I've got Meld as well. 2 scenes. I love Meld from Voyager. It's Tuvok and Lon Suter when they're kind of messing with each other on the Vulcan mind belt. And then also when Tuvok is behind the force field and has no emotion or no restraint on his emotion, it's just ripped Janeway. Amazing scene. I also had from Enterprise Anomaly, where Archer tortures the Osarian who robbed the ship. I've got Tosk from Tosk when he's standing and getting captured in the holding cell on Deep Space Nine. I've got a fistful of Datas with a couple of Hollander brothers for creepily turning into Data. I've got Facets, where Cisco was Joran in the Brig and basically batting his head against the force field. I love that scene. I've also got Worst Case Scenario, where Cisco revealed that she was the mastermind behind rewriting that Insurrection Alpha program, I think it was, with Tuvok and Paris on the Brig. I've got a trifecta captains held captive: Allegiance, Canamar, and Bounty from TNG and Enterprise. And then I've got the TOS Jailbreak Edition. I chose Bread of Circuses, where they break out. There's also the Omega Glory and Patterns of Force. And I firmly believe that the Kirk and Spock / fiction began with Patterns of Force. You know what I'm talking about. It's
oh, yeah.
Spock, shirtless and bloody in an SS prison cell on the planet Ecos. And it's just classic, fun jailbreak stuff where they're cutting into their wrist and breaking their way out of the cell. And then my special shout out, I love this scene, was Body and Soul from Voyager, where Jerry Ryan is basically playing the doctor. And she comes into the jail cell or to the Brig on this ship and says, "Reports of my decompilation have been greatly exaggerated." I love that moment. I almost picked that. And so far, nobody mentioned 30 Days, which is interesting. It's a big-time Voyager Brig episode. And nobody mentioned Rura Penthe, Undiscovered Country, and Judgment from Enterprise. So there's just way too much to cover for Briggs. That's probably our longest secondary systems ever. So let's wrap this show up and get into our regeneration cycle.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
Amazing conversation. I love how in depth we got there with our secondary systems and all those picks we were rattling off. But now let's quickly recap our picks, and then we'll talk about some of the statistics tonight. So Scott, break down your top 5.
Number 5, I had Next Generation episode Descent Part 1. Number 4, Next Generation Heart of Glory. Number 3, Deep Space Nine Duet. Number 2, Next Generation Skin of Evil. And number 1, Next Generation Chain of Command Part 2.
So Scott introduced himself as a TNG fan and then proceeded to pick 4 TNG episodes and 1 DS9. We love that. That is fantastic.
Didn't even realize until after we started the show.
And you know what? I never really think about it when I'm doing. I never really look at my numbers until this moment. So it's always kind of interesting to see how it breaks down. Rick, how about your top 5?
Okay, number 5 was Deep Space Nine's Waltz. Number 4 was TOS, A Piece of the Action. Number 3 was Star Trek Discovery, Battle of the Binary Stars. Number 2 was Deep Space Nine, The Jem'Hadar. And number 1 was Deep Space Nine Duet.
Fantastic. So you had 3 from Deep Space Nine and then 1 each from TOS and Discovery. And my top 5 was Bread and Circuses with Spock and McCoy in the jail cell from TOS. I had The Hunted with Data and Roga Danar from TNG. DS9 Duet with Amin Maritza and Kira. My number 2 pick was Discovery Battle at the Binary Stars with Ensign Danby Connor. And my number 1 pick, DS9 in Purgatory's Shadow with the death of Nalgren Tain. So I had 2 from Deep Space Nine, 1 each from TOS, TNG, and Discovery. We had 1 duplicate and 1 triplicate, a rare triplicate. We love that because Duet deserves that honor. The breakdown was pretty not spread out that much. Voyager, Enterprise, and the Kelvin timeline all shut out. That's been a rarity of late. So many would get shut out. So that means I need to hear from you guys and hear your Voyager picks, because there are a ton of good Voyager Brig scenes. So our breakdown was Discovery and TOS each had 2 picks. TNG had 5, and Deep Space Nine representing with 6 overall selections. We love to break down those stats. But as always, way too much fun, and we've now entered the temporal causality loop. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
The Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop, and I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
This week, we're going to have a pure temporal causality loop. We are flashing back to 3 previous episodes of TrekRanks that we've received feedback on in the last few weeks. We love reminding everyone that our episodes are timeless, and you can listen or re-listen to them anytime. They never get dated, so go back, find some of our old episodes that you haven't listened to, and send us your list. But first up, we are transporting all the way back to episode 10 in our top 5 Klingon episodes. We got a list in from Jeff Owen, who is at NCC_17 Formula 1, but the O is a 0 and it's a 1. So anyway, you'll figure it out. Jeff Owen, we've heard from him before, and he's on Twitter. He had his top 5 Klingon episodes were number 5, Blood Oath. Wait, number 4, Blood Oath. He had Blood Oath twice. Maybe that's a typo on my part. I think I blew it. Sorry, Jeff.
Blood Oath is good enough for to do it twice.
And number 3 was Discovery. Will You Take My Hand? I love that. Number 2, Way of the Warrior. And number 1, Apocalypse Rising. Totally blew that. Temporal causality loop. We got chronotons everywhere. I don't know what's happening. Okay, next up, Wayne Frazier, at Wayne Frazier on Twitter. He went back to episode 20, our top 5 one-off heroes, and I love his deep cut picks. His number 5 pick from Carbon Creek was Mistral. I Love Lucy is on tonight. Love that pick. He had Face of the Enemy, Sub-Commander Navek. Great pick. He had Macias, who just wants some nice, steaming, hot Hasperat from Preemptive Strike in TNG. Love that pick as a one-off hero. From Blink of an Eye, our favorite Voyager episode, he had Katana Retz. And his number 1, I love this pick because she's one of my favorite characters I would love to see more of. Ooh, that's a good topic. We should do that. Top 5 characters we want to see more of. Yesterday's Enterprise, Captain Rachel Garrett. So
yeah.
So good. And finally, a full 5-word summary and hashtag submission going back to episode 45 and our top 5 weirdest characters, which is our celebration of the weird, from Ben Nicholson at Ben Kerr Now, BenKer Now on Twitter. Number 5, where does he go toilet? Hashtag cheese eating fetish, and he picked Porthos as one of his weird characters. Number 4, shy naturalist zoologist who inflates, hashtag works naked. It was Phlox. So we have another weird character. I love that 5 words in the hashtag. Oh, these are good. His number 3 is stereotypes, farm animals, and hooch. Hashtag don't let your daughter near Riker. It's Danilo O'Dell from Up the Long Ladder. That is a deep, deep, deep cut. Also from TNG, Up the Long Ladder, he has number 2, no sex, please. I'm Mariposan. Hashtag, are those triplets? It's the Mariposan triplets. As this is amazing. And his number 1, I think we mentioned on the show, 5 words in a hashtag. What is it going to be? Hashtag space hippie. It's Adam from Way Too. All right. Awesome list from Ben. As always, thanks to everyone for sending all your amazing picks to TrekRanks. Keep them coming so we can tweet them out and let everybody know what everyone thinks of our different topics. So put your own list together of top 5 scenes in a brig and tweet at us or give us a call. Tell us your list. You can call us at Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of Trek Ranks, we are diving back into our character series. So far we've done our top 5 episodes for Kirk and Captain Benjamin Sisko and Kira Nerys, and we are continuing with the heavy hitter characters. That's right. Next up, it's Voyager specific, and it's our top 5 Neelix episodes. Yes! Heavy hitter characters. We love Neelix on Trek Ranks. Don't care what you think about them. So Scott and Rick, any jumping out at you guys that you might include initially on your top 5 Neelix episodes, or it could be a Neelix moment. We're kind of loose on how we define that. So Scott, what do you got?
Well, he had so many nice moments, I thought.
Yes.
I don't recall any Neelix moments that really blew me away, but there would always be, one or two nice moments in any episode that Neelix showed up in. It's hard for me to really think of them because I will admit that Voyager I've watched through the series twice.
Right.
And that's it. Whereas all the other series I've watched them dozens of times. But
that makes sense. I always tell people, and I actually put my hashtag on our character ranks on Trek Ranks, is more gravitas than you remember. Neelix he's got a lot going for him as a character. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And if someone were to ask me to, name what's an episode that really jumps out when you think of Neelix, I would have to. It may sound, cheap and easy, but I would have to say Caretaker.
Good to meet you, Mr. Vulcan. I love that pick. That's very cool. There's probably going to be a lot of initial moments with Neelix as well. All right, Rick, how about you? Anything?
Yeah, I could be cruel and say the time when the Vidian stole his lungs, but that. I think I don't remember the episode title, but the episode where he was kind of brought back from the dead and had that existential crisis of I didn't see the afterlife.
Yeah, Mortal Coil, brilliant.
That was a really powerful episode. Neelix gets a lot of undeserved ire, much like Wesley Crusher did.
Yeah.
I think Ethan Phillips did a great job with the character. I would advise everybody to go back and watch Tuvix again with an open mind, because I rewatched that not too long ago, and it is not the farce you remember it being. It's a very powerful. It's not as cut and dried as you think you remember it.
It's very nuanced.
It's amazing. All right, it's gonna be a Neelix love fest here on Trek Ranks next week. So you better come back and listen, everybody, because Neelix is awesome, and we're gonna prove it to you in this episode. All right. So before we wrap it up, a huge thanks to Scott Matteson and Rick Tetrault. Guys, love it. Love these picks. Any final thoughts? I want you guys to tell us too a little bit about kind of where you guys can be heard. I know you guys both have your own shows that you do. So Scott, really quick.
Well, first off, I want to say thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Ever since the first episode I listened to, I said, I'm going to have to get on this show because this is my jam, as the kids say. Do the kids still say that? I don't know. I'm saying it today.
Sure. I don't know. I'm an old man.
As far as where can I be found on the internet, if anyone actually has a desire to hear me or see me, sorry, but I can be heard on various productions on the Cosmic Potato Podcast Network, occasionally appearing on the Discovery After Show, occasionally appearing on Cosmic Potato, the Super Fan Talk podcast, and sometimes on Captain Game Show. I can be found on Twitter for freelance graphic art commissions, always taking new commissions, always willing to negotiate a price and do some artwork for you. You can find me on Twitter at Planet Rise, that's PlanetRise, or you can visit my website, planetrisecreative.com. And finally, what is the most exciting for me is that soon I will be relaunching a podcast on the Cosmic Potato Podcast Network where I will sit down, have a one-on-one conversation with a person about their Trek history. How did they get started? How has it affected their lives? What's their favorite series? And what impact has the Star Trek franchise as a whole had on them throughout their lifetime? The show is called The Prime Directive. My first episode will be with the original host and founder, Sean Ray, and I will be lining up future guests after him. And Jim, I absolutely need you to be on that show.
I will happily do that. That's quite a roundup. Rick, try to top that. That's a lot of stuff.
Well, I am also on the Cosmic Potato shows from time to time.
By the way, I did not know that when I asked these. Yeah. I had no idea. So that just worked out.
Yeah, it's a happy coincidence. I have loved Rick like a brother for at least 5 years, and Jim had no idea that we knew each other when he brought us on.
Small world out there in Twitter.
That it is. Also, I have my own podcast network called the Infinite Diversity Network. I have a show called Infinite Diversity where I interview folks that are Star Trek fans and that are doing cool stuff in the world. I have Open the Iris, which is my Stargate SG-1 watch-through show. And also, soon to be reborn is my original podcast, Starbase 66, only this will be Starbase The Next Generation, and we'll be recording our first new episode this week.
I love it. That is great. And I'm going to make a comment that Planet Rise sounds like the name of a Voyager episode. I love it. Get your Trek commissions from Scott Matteson. Okay, let's wrap this up. We are running long, but that was a fantastic episode. And I hope you made it this far because you know I'm going to play an awesome soundbite here at the end of the credits. So I hope you guys are hanging in there. Okay, thanks again for engaging with us here on episode 52 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
On Beta Antares 4, they play a real game. It's a man's game, but of course, probably a little beyond you. It requires intelligence.
Listen, Kirk, I can play anything you can figure out. Take the cards, big man. Show us how it's played.
Captain, I'm familiar with the culture on Beta Antares 4. I don't know of any game.
Of course, the cards on Beta Antares 4 are different, but not too different. The name of the game is called Fizbin.
Fizbin.
Fizbin. It's not too difficult.
Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.
Look at that. You got another jack. How lucky you are. How wonderful for you. Now, if you didn't get another jack, if you had gotten a king, why, then you'd get another card, except when it's dark, when you'd have to give it back.
If it were dark on Tuesday.
Yes, but what you're after is a royal Fizbin, but the odds in getting a royal Fizbin are Spock, what are the odds in getting a royal Fizbin?
I've never computed them, Captain.
Well, they're astronomical, believe me.